Welcome, Major General, to the Leaders Who Care series. It's I've been looking forward to this one for sure since we met. Since we know each other for at least what 2 weeks or something. But I feel like we've got to, and we're going to get to know each other much better. So, welcome to the series.
Oh, Mark, thank you. It's really a special time to be here today and have this conversation. And while we've known each other for a short time, we can also say that we have a lot of similarities and we really care and want to get after helping others care better and invest in others.
100%, 100%. So, the usual place best to start, Dusty, if I may.
Of
If you could
course.
briefly introduce yourself. We will get into the business stuff and the work stuff and all you do, but tell us who you are. Tell us where you're from originally, where you are now, about
Okay.
family, maybe something you've never told anybody ever you want to reveal now. That's not necessary, but if you want. So tell us about you.
Well, my name is Major General Dustin, or I go by Dusty Shultz. I'm originally from California. I grew up in Northern California, and then lived in Spain, and then graduated from Santa Barbara High School. I married a Texan. I'm the proud mother of two wonderful grown children, and the great grandmother of five grandchildren under the age of three.
Wow.
And most people don't know in this community that I am also dyslexic. And I'm the daughter of an antiquarian bookseller. So I shouldn't be dyslexic because, I come from a family of very literate individuals. But all that to say is, with a little grit and determination, I've been able to move forward. And currently, I have been at U.S. Southern Command as the Director of Intelligence. And before that, I was on the Army staff as the Director of Strategic Operations that ran Army space, data, cyber, and data transformation, as well as things that to this population I'm not sure care, like information advantage and combined joint all domain command and control.
And
So
that
I've
all
had this
fits.
large portfolio. I've deployed to Iraq. I'd like to think that as a woman of faith, that I have given my best and my all to love my family and also, you know, love my country and be part of making the world a better place.
And that sound cliche or whatnot. I certainly thank you for all your service and beyond, like who you are in your service, which really hit me when I first met you. So I really, really appreciate that, and that's why I'm super glad you're here to share some of it. I always find it fascinating to ask people what they were like as a kid and maybe a teenager and see what thread happens to go future. Were you an action movie gal or organizing friends we in Montreal in the winter we had little forts and we did stuff like that. What were you like as a kid?
Well, I think I probably should start with you with kind of a word picture. Not quite Pippi Longstocking, if you knew who that was, but imagine a young girl with long hair and Star Wars socks, cowboy boots, and a calico dress, marching around singing "I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy."
Nice
And
visualization.
and then I'd get on my little Shetland pony and go riding off and be gone for the entire day. So that's who I was as a young kid, and very independent, very opinionated, strong-minded, and also at the same token very loving. And yes, I was kind of the ringleader of some really wonderful teams and groups of friends. But I always looked for the individual and was not trying to do any of the bullying or owning a team. I was always trying to help people find the best of themselves and their strengths, and so that's been one of my passions since I was young. It turns out that when I was around and just having turned a teenager, unfortunately my mother passed away, and while I was dyslexic and couldn't write a full paragraph, somehow I applied and got accepted to an all-girls private Catholic boarding school and got a scholarship. And so my dad my mother always said, sweetheart, nobody can take your education from you. Go after your education. So I did. Ironically, most of the young ladies that were actually in the boarding portion of the school were from foreign countries learning English. And so I decided that I needed to learn another language. And so I went on repeat and put an application in to be an exchange student. And next thing you know, at 14 years old, I was an exchange student in Spain and, on another adventure.
That's,
So I,
that's
yeah.
amazing. Did you have siblings? I can't remember.
I do. I have an older sister. She's 4.5 years older than I am. And Allie had, when my mother was my parents had divorced and my mother was going through her cancer, Allie had some really low points to where she was getting mixed up in gangs and drugs and the like. And so she actually was an inspiration to me in the sense that I looked over at her and saw her challenges and drove to the idea that, yes, I needed to get an education and I could control my future. I could make decisions.
Did you bring the Shetland pony for show and tell?
Um, so yes, actually, growing up as the daughter of an antiquarian bookseller, my dad had a lot of antiques around the house. And we actually had and my father is also a descendant of William Penn. So, I mean, we have literally family antiques of 300 years old. We had a 300-year-old spinning wheel in our house. And on a dare, one of my friends said, "Oh, well, I bet you can't bring your horse in the house." So I grabbed the Shetland pony and walked him in the house. Unfortunately, he slipped on our hardwood floor.
The pony
and hit the spinning wheel, broke the spinning wheel. And then I had to later on try and explain to my dad, and unfortunately, I was not the most genuine of what exactly happened. I just told him it was an accident. Didn't share the fact that it was the horse having an accident. And later on in life, my father had the spinning wheel refurbished and brought it to my daughter as a family heirloom gift. Nice. And my husband flippantly looked over at me and said, "Hey, is that the one that you broke with the horse?"
Oh, no.
And my dad's head just about came undone. He was like, "You brought what?"
So the truth always comes out.
It does. It does.
The problem
it might be 25 years later, but it's going to come out.
The problem was you couldn't keep the secret. You had to tell somebody, and you told your husband.
I did, never thinking that anyone would really know, but yes.
I would think a Shetland pony would be good leverage to keep, not that you needed it, to get good marks, get good friends, or whatever,
Oh, absolutely. So between Shetland ponies and, sheep and chickens, I used to show chickens. And so white crested black Polishes and Bantam black Cochins. And you actually have to wash these birds that are living and chirping, make them clean to be able to show them. And so we used to do that a lot and take them to fairs and the like, and it really did build great friendships.
No, I'm sure. And I find right now, and it's another subject to be had, but I find right now a lot of people are actually craving, even some paying to get some time on farms and doing things like that, because you can tell people are craving the nature, the back to basics, grounded the whole bit. So that sounds like it's right, basically. And I think,
absolutely. Growing up on a farm and having the responsibility of taking care of something besides yourself and understanding that you had to feed it, you had to provide it water, is really impactful.
Yeah, and you kind of develop a relationship, don't you, with them?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So yes, there was on our farm, you had animals that you named because those you were going to have relationships with, and there were others that were more named to appropriately, like dinner, lunch.
So I think I could see the animals vying to be named for real. But please don't name me lunch. Can you name me Joe or something?
Exactly.
Well, you talked about education a little bit before. You had an extensive education, a bachelor's in poli-sci, master's in national security policy studies. You got a master's in strategic intel and a whole lot more specialized training. And What intrigued you to take the armed services path and to learn then about security, leadership, and more?
Well, not being from a military family, when I came back from Spain, I was thinking of ways, and also acknowledging that, my mother wasn't even allowed to go to college because her father said young ladies don't go to college.
Hmm.
And so I was looking at ways to be able to go and to fund myself to go to college. And I actually ran across a advertisement to go to the Naval Academy. And when I did the information, I was doing the process and I looked over at my dad, who I loved, and he loved me, and he wanted the best for me in this world. But he actually said, "Hey, sweetheart, why don't you just marry an officer?" Now, I don't know if he did that to inspire me or because he wanted to protect me, but either way, as an incredibly rebellious daughter, I decided this is what I'm going to do.
Hmm.
And now I had grown up in a home that had really taught me life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and believing in our nation and understanding the basic tenets of our Constitution. And I wanted to support that. So in my mind, joining one of the most capable organizations within our nation and help it move forward to help people was really critical. And then I found out that I could possibly do it um, through a scholarship, and I could be paid to go to college. And so after getting an appointment and nomination to Annapolis, I got cold feet because I didn't know what I was getting into. And I looked at it as 4 years of school and 6 years of active duty afterwards. And that's when New Mexico Military Institute, which is a 2-year military junior college, reached out to me and said, "Hey, we've seen your SAT scores and you could have a physical and mental challenge, but you wouldn't have to sign up for the same 10 years of active duty. You could decide whether you wanted to go in reserve or active duty." And I thought, And then they said, "And we'll send you to a 6-week no commitment camp in Fort Knox, Kentucky, and you can see if you even like it." And so I did. And I found out I loved it. It was this physical challenge. They were going to teach me all the things I need to know to be a great leader and succeed.
Hmm.
I started off like with my first push-up going down and never coming back up. And I was taught these things. And the neat thing for me is we had these incredible drill sergeants who really poured the best of themselves into these young cadets, to include myself, to really help us be better people. And I just absorbed it wonderfully and decided that, hey, this is something that I want to do. I want to help others find the best of themselves as they go forward in life.
No, that's brilliant. I know we all say thank you for your service, and hopefully most of the time it's probably sincere. Um, and yet it seems, personal opinion, that sometimes it's just not enough type of thing, and it becomes too much of just a line to say, even though I think most people do care, but it's just a line. Can you share with us a little bit about what a day in your life looked like at the beginning, and then and for your family too, as you were advancing in armed services?
Well, I'm fortunate that David and I have been married 34 years. So about a year and a half before I got my bachelor's degree, after I had gotten my commission, about a year after David and I got married. And then about a year after that, we had our first child. So here I was, an extremely young parent, doing reserve duty. And I was fortunate to be around incredible field artillery units and combat engineer units that had these incredible non-commissioned officers that had spent more time in their profession in the military than I had been alive.
Wow.
And they were willing to also give back to me as a leader, you know, just some real common sense.
Hmm.
And so I started off there, and then I also, at the same time, became a school teacher. And so then I transitioned onto active duty. David had been a police officer, and I, as a school teacher, we realized that our combined incomes were not helping us go forward at all. And so we made a transition for me to go on to active duty. And then David came home and became a youth and music pastor.
Nice.
And then shortly thereafter, at about the 8.5 year mark of marriage, David looked at me and said, "So are you going to do this forever? Are you going, what's your plan?" And I said, "Well, if I ever have another kid, I'll come off back to duty." And then we had our daughter. I got pregnant the next month, and we had a daughter 9 months later. And I did all my paperwork to leave the military. And the military does its releases for its officers traditionally right at the end of the fiscal year. And in that fiscal year, what happened was 9/11 happened. And so I called up the Army headquarters and I said, "Hi, I love my country, but where is my release paperwork?" And they laughed and they said, "No, you're an intelligence officer and you are going to stay in the military and you need to be prepared to go on active duty." And so that kind of just flipped David and I's reality on its head. And I had done a lot of different things over time with the military in a lot of different positions as an intel analyst. And I had worked with high intensity drug trafficking intelligence communities. So the FBI, the DEA, the Forest Service, to combat those things. And so I really thought that they were going to pull me on active duty and have me do something of that nature. But ironically, they pulled me on active duty and made me an assistant professor at the University of Utah in the ROTC department, which was phenomenal because it really allowed me to invest in that next generation and understand a kind of a construct on how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so from there, I had the good fortune of going to my command and general staff college in Spanish. Because I am a Spanish linguist, I also work Portuguese, and I decided that if I was going to do it, I wanted to do it well. And if I had the opportunity to work with partner nations and affect enduring change, that was the way to do it. So I did that. I additionally then went to a battalion that I thought I was going to deploy with. It didn't deploy. And so there was a magic move in there where Admiral Stavridis actually had me moved down to Southern Command because of my Spanish skill sets. And I worked in Southern Command and helped with NGOs and PVOs working on the Continuing Promise ship mission. And as we were working and doing that, that's when the Haiti earthquake happened. And so I did all the coordination for the NGOs and PVOs donations for Haiti back in 2010 after the earthquake.
So let me ask you something there. You talked about somewhere where I saw it. You talked about transformational leadership, and I think the quote I dug up was solving problems in new and unique ways. And I get a lot of clients that literally ask me, "Can you find someone from a different industry to come into this position for different perspectives?" Which I love when they tell me that. All the stuff you talk about, you gain stuff even if you don't notice it while you're doing different things. You gain leadership skills here and there and whatnot. How did you provide leadership and create cultures to achieve the right impact and results that you wanted in all these different ones? Everything looks easy when a professional does it and knows what they're doing, whether it's an athlete or an actor or a doctor. Well, I can do that. No, you don't have any idea. It's easy because they really worked and they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's why it looks easy. So how did you do it?
I will tell you, it's based on kind of a tenet of transparency, competency, and energy. Being an ex-school teacher, you have to set expectations. You have to set a common understanding for the people that you're working with. What's your mission? How do you build that cohesive team? And then as you have that cohesive team, how do you share with them what the problem is and start understanding what their strengths are? So as you get after what your purpose is, which is, what's the intent? It's the purpose, the key task, the end state. And then because you know strengths, you're going to empower people to chase after their strengths, ideally complementary, or also identifying where you have a blind side with disciplined initiative. And as a leader, they need to feel safe enough with me that I'm going to take some risk, that they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to do it my way.
I love that.
They do need to have to understand that we have rules and we have to, still abide by those rules. But just because I would go right first and then left, and you go left and then right, doesn't necessarily make one better than the other.
Yeah, I love that. I go by the rule that it was on the Mighty Ducks movie, and we used to do it when I coached kids in hockey. You put them all together and you put a rope around them and say go, and they fall all over the place until they realize they got to go in the same direction and stuff. And it's I guess it's something we talked about before a little bit. Clear is kind. The really
Yeah.
great people feel that you've been most kind when they know exactly what the rules are and exactly what the mission is, right?
Right. And that you're on their team. You want their success.
Right.
Um, I've when I took my battalion to Iraq, I started off with doing very detailed counselings of expectations with all of my key leaders of what their job was, how I was going to hold them accountable, all those things. And it was interesting because most of them looked at me and said, well, I've never had a leader that's been this aggressive about what they want and what metrics. Da, da. I mean, they've received their job description before, but not in such detail. And I circle back to the fact that, yes, I was a teacher who did grading rubrics and did, strategies for a curriculum for an entire year. So I just tried to help my leaders have that same sense of these are the things I'm going to start looking for and come back to me, because this is an interactive conversation, and I can't pretend to be in your driver's seat, but I can try and help set you up for success.
Did you do the same thing with your daughters?
So absolutely, my daughter. So I have a
Your
daughter and
daughter.
a son,
Okay,
and
the kids, right?
um, and yes, and probably giving them a little bit more freedom. Uh, but at the same token, being very deliberate in helping them kind of shape out what they wanted for the future, and while giving them an idea, helping them also understand that idea can change. Missions can change.
Right.
Um,
It's
you
a great,
know,
it's a great thing to be told that the mission can change and whatnot, to know and be prepared for that. Absolutely.
absolutely, yes. I mean, our daughter was a modern pentathlete, but she didn't start out as one. She started off as a swimmer, and then she was told by the doctor that she couldn't swim 6 hours a day anymore. She'd have to go down to about, 2 hours. And I'm like, okay, but what do you want to do? And she was able to channel that into something different. So that was really powerful.
Yeah, one of my sons has a similar example. He was a great goalie. He was getting scholarships and whatnot, had a couple of concussions, and but because he had another passion, which was acting, and now he's an actor, he was able to pivot. I don't know if he would have been able to pivot as easily if he didn't have that other passion to go. But but she did it, apparently, and
Yes.
so did my son. We were launched our firm on International Women's Day, and I love to ask how you navigated. I work with a lot of women, how you navigated and thrived, and you possibly had, I'm sure, had some challenges when you're talking about being a leader, but you are a woman leader, and I can't imagine it was always accepted like beautifully.
Oh, probably absolutely not. I will tell you that, first of all, obviously my first name is Dustin, which is traditionally a male role, a male name.
Right.
And I went into my first unit, a field artillery drill sergeant unit, which was all male. So I wasn't supposed to even be there. And they were looking at me saying, "Where's Dustin?" Like, here is Dustin. Here she is. They're like, "No, we're looking for the male Dustin." Uh,
Male
and,
attested.
but it was interesting in that unit, those leaders actually taught, they're like, well, you're here. So, and they treated me as an equal. And they also did a lot of role playing with me. So these drill sergeants would say, okay, so I'm a young soldier and I'm going to look at you and say, well, I don't have to listen to you, Lieutenant, because you're a girl. How are you going to respond? And that was huge, is
Yep.
that the actual role playing and verbalizing those things. And so I was always known as being one of those individuals that if you said something that offended me, I would try not to make, I personally believe that you praise in public and you chastise in private, but I would pull aside and say, do you know that what you just said really offended me?
Hmm.
Now, the other thing I will tell you is I've been so driven, maybe it's part of my dyslexia, and that I have this drive to work really hard until I get it. And so often I have had the need to outwork my male peers so no one could ever point a finger and say she didn't work harder. The real question is like, you cannot deny that I outpaced you,
I hear
that I
that from
outworked
a
you.
lot of women executives and whatnot. You had no choice. You had to work harder to be almost equal a lot of times in that sense. So I get it.
Truly, although I will tell you, it also taught me how, if I wanted all the things in my life, how to not waste time on things, how to be efficient, how to be effective. Now, I'm also wonderfully blessed with an incredible husband who's my life partner. And so I wasn't having to do parenting alone. I wasn't having to do things alone. I also had a person that I could go and confide in and say, I had this conversation and this is what I said. And I trust my husband. So when he looks at me and says, "You said what? Did you use your outside voice with that?" You know, it was really actually a healthy thing because it made me pause and go, "Oh, you mean people don't like it when you say that?" Or,
Yeah, no, well, I think with I can imagine because you can't really imagine unless you're really in that person's shoes. But it's come a long way, and I love the fact that there were men there that wanted to role model and be part of your leadership, if you will, and training. I think that's fantastic.
well, and I
I,
think that's critical.
yeah,
I think you talked about your company being launched on Women's Day. That is a critical piece. Having champions.
right.
When I have done women, peace, and security events throughout the world, I try and tell people, first of all, I wish it was called equality, peace, and security. And then I also tell people that we need champions. We need, both gender champions of, being able to say equality, peace, and security.
No, I love that too. It should be, as most women I talk to say, we be way past the you were the first woman this and first woman that and just be you were type of thing.
Yes.
Which hopefully we'll get there. In LA we say keep them wanting more so we can do a sequel. So we may have to do a sequel, but I have one more question I want to ask you here.
Okay.
A client told me in 2021, a client said to me, the year 2020 was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought it's really true because we kind of feel like it was yesterday and yet years ago at the same time. So with that said, and now we're already in 2025, amazingly, what are you most grateful for and what are you most hopeful for?
Um, well, I'm wonderfully grateful that I have an incredible family. David and I have been married for 34 years, and I have two children and the five grandchildren, and that we're close and we have a good communication. And that I have a good, I don't have a good, I have a great community. I have a lot of people that I've invested a lot of time in and that I've just seen grow and flourish. And so, as I'm hopeful, as I transition from the military and different things, I'm hopeful that that next generation really picks up and leads with, you know, dignity, grace, innovation. That they really we strive to make a world truly a better place, and that we have that selfless service that can move at the speed of trust.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And that service you're talking about will actually make you feel fantastic
Mm,
when you do it. Most the thing that fills people's hearts and souls, it's been proven most than anything, is belonging.
yeah,
And I think we're all craving that right now. So I'm really grateful for a new friend for sure. In that community maybe, and
absolutely. We're yes,
cool. And I'm also grateful that you are a leader who cares because we need a lot more. And I think there's leaders who care everywhere that are just trying to come out and be that. And so that's why we're trying to recognize them. And that's what I'm hopeful for too, based on that same thing. So thanks for being on the series. Congratulations on in 2 days the official retirement and on to new and greater things, and we'll be watching.
Mark, thank you. And this is such an incredible platform because we have to remind ourselves sometimes when we see hard and bad things in the world that leaders do care and they are out there, and how do we learn from those leaders? So thank you for doing this.
No, thanks. Amen.